So I think I just finished the map for Trilogy 1. So my book series is called NALA Saga. It's about orcs with emotion magic, and this continent is the home of orcs, largely. There are also goblins and giants. My elves are kind of like elemental elves. You know, I've got ice elves and magma elves. Elves with skin of solid magmatic skin, but their eyes are still fresh magma, still fluid, still burning. And there are also willow elves and cherry tree elves, and instead of sleeping, they root every night. And if they fruit, then they fruit after every sleep, you know, things like that. Anyways, I thought what I would do is I would just take you on a little tour. Just of the important parts. There's a lot to look at with this map, but book 1, we start with Nala in her home in Orkshire Valley. She's 11. This is where she grew up, way up in the corner here. And then in book 2, we follow her as she goes across the continent to Neum, or at least that's where she's trying to get to. So she does come down here to Bolt Hollow, to the Grove Village. Some of her friends go to Orlathaya while she gets kidnapped and taken down into the Mogla jungle. Through the Mogla jungle, there's the Parch Perchin somewhere over here. Got Ugru's Ravine, where she meets her goddess. She goes and she sees the skeleton in this gigantic temple of sleep, the skeleton of this dragon. And she touches the dragon and she merges with it, and then she sort of gets her like top level, not final form, but fullest potential is reached of shadow magic. That happens in the middle of book 2. This is also... So here's the country of Juk, and somewhere in here is the Dust Temple where Rowan gets the dust touch. They double back to the Parched Perch, and then they'll eventually they're having a bunch of trouble in Juk right now. They'll come up to Curlew, which is the land of the cave orcs. Think like vampire orcs. And then they'll go all the way up to Snowjaw, where the new emperor of the orcs, Bakura, who we met in book 1, is right here in Fort Ibru, and he's basically plotting a way to destroy the Lich and the Death Knight who rule humans from Neum down here. They get a plan going. They come down south. They fight the Death Knight at Misty Bluff. Some things happen. We'll get to see the Mirror Temple in Iarnum. We'll get to see a whole lot of Neum, and then we'll get to finish out the trilogy in the new Orcish capital of Calcriel. So book 2 and 3, it really does go all the way across this map, but that's not to say that there are no places to investigate. So if we take a closer look here, there are all these little diamonds, and those are all places where I'm like, oh, we can have encounters. We can, like a town would go there, or this would be the name of a bridge, or this would be the name of a forest or something like that, or a glade, or, you know, like lots of Mogla jungle is basically milkskin orcs, and it's a cross between the Darien Gap and then Nor over here is like Kokiri Forest from Ocarina of Time, you know, where like this is okay because of magic, because of like magical enchantment, but it's in the middle of the most horrifically terrorized part of this whole map, at least in Orcish standards. The humans are doing pretty bad stuff too right now. But like if you look at Lower Mogla, Mugra, Sebulur, I have so little here on purpose so that when I do run, like let's look at Yegura Desert. This has 2 very important landmarks. It's got Bakura's mother's grave, extremely important site. It's also got the Caves of Bliss, which is also an extremely important site, because if you've read Orc lore and you know the poem The First Warfather, or the First Barbarian, the First Barbarian was named Bliss. And so in theory, that first Warfather, his bones are in the Caves of Bliss, which is that's going to be like a pilgrimage site for Bakura in one of his side quest books. But you've also got Magmakin Isle. You've got these islands. You know, this Treaty Island, which is between these 3 different I guess you could call them nations. Gumgor Isle isn't really a nation, but it has its own government. But it's Treaty Island. It's a place where people from all three of these cultures feel like they're from all three of these cultures. East Neum used to be called Arduiel, the home of Ardun Arun, who is like a big orcish epic hero. House of the Lich right here. This is where chapter 1 of book 2 takes place. Esper Manor. This is where Rowan's family is from, right by that lake, big castle manor. Goblin Town. This is the noir center of my story. At some point, I want to write a series of side quests about goblin gangsters. You know, book 1 would be taking the plot of The Godfather and turning it into goblins with wizardry magic and, you know, slinging glow potions to humans who will mutate every time they take a potion, but they're addicted, so they can't stop. And then, like, book 2 of that side quest would be The Departed, but with goblins, or Infernal Affairs, but with goblins. And then the third one would be something else, like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But each one would be some sort of tribute to crime fiction, to the crime fiction that I love. I'm really excited about this area. This is the closest thing that I have to the Fae. The Fae, there are no Fae in my world, but there's so much that's magical that's going on that it's it would be hard for, like, Fae means other, and everything in my world is other. So Song Hollow, the Starwood, you know, these are places where your wishes get granted and then you immediately regret it. The Mirror Temple, this is a place where a pretty important moment happens at the end of book 2, where Bakura gets not the final piece of his bone set armor, but he gets the breastplate and he becomes a dragon. Like, he'll put on the breastplate and then his torso becomes the dragon's mouth, and then a dragon of pure flame, you know, takes over his body and it flies into the air, and then it just starts destroying everything. And that he gets that piece of armor in the Mirror Temple. It's loot. What you gotta loot? Curlew, Land of Sentra, Cave Orcs. So these are like vampire orcs, Sentra City. This is actually a reference to the first fantasy story that I ever tried to write with my grandma. With my grandma Nadine. And the prince there is named Va'an. And that is also a reference to Vampirian Angel. I think that's let's see. That's less than 10 minutes. I did okay. Misty Bluff, a big battle happens there, like I said. This is the body of a giant. In my world, the giants are mountains. They're dead giants become mountains. Or like a lake giant, when he dies, he becomes the giant's pond. That's how it goes. You know, like in the mythology, Bliss, this orcish hero, slew all of these giants. And so there are many different spots, Misty Bluff and Giant's Pond being the two most famous ones, that are like the myth goes, Bliss slew that giant, and now that's what the territory is like. Dryade Desert, Lone Grove. But lots of these, I'm just waiting until I've got a tabletop group, because I've got a very clear vision of here, pretty clear vision of here and here. Ugrath, I'm very excited to work in, but I don't have anything for there really. Lower Magla. Lower Magla used to be one of the most sophisticated cultures in all of the continent, and then the Magla, who are just pillagers. It's what they do. It's what they like to do. And it's how they've always been. The Magla and the Yegura have always been brutal. Like what you think of when you think of orcs, what Aragorn is thinking of when he's like, I'm going to kill all the orcs, that's Yegura and that's Magla. That's what they do. And so what the Magla did what they do, and they conquered Lower Magla. They erased their name like they do in Tagana, but they just didn't have to curse them. And then they renamed them, and then they just abandoned this area. So what was one of the most prosperous areas is now just it's like gone backward in time in terms of technology. And Orlithaya, you'll note, when the reason that Paka comes to Orkshire is because the Mogla have raided and destroyed Orlithaya. So it's pretty rough, pretty brutal, you know. And then they just leave it. One of the things that I was really proud of with this is, when this happened a long time ago, and then this happened more recently. But when Lower Mogla was turned into that, Orlithaya suddenly became isolated from a lot of the land. Even crossing the bridge here, I'm actually going into technically Mogla territory. And so what they started to do is they started to treat with the Naga more, and they became more interested in ports. Like, these are all ports right here. So that's why the Orlithaya became such a trade-heavy civilization, and that's why Paka has glasses. That's why he knows how to read and write by the age of 11 when we meet him in Book 1, is because this culture here was forced into like an isolation, and like where else can we turn? Where else can we look? And they started to say, well, we've got a lot of water. We can trade with Orkshire. We can trade across the setting sea. We can actually sail down around here. These are all ports. You'll notice that there are lots of ports on the back sides of these islands. Sorry. You know, like they became a node on the Ebuluri trade route. Ebulur goes from here to Slaga, you know. Estegor and Gilpoint are both port cities. They go here, they go here, they go to Port Large. This is the main, this is one of the biggest ports in all of Ugria. But Hadast, it really became bigger than Port Little. This was already there, but Hadast became the settlement of the Orlithaya down there. So like the way that you a lot of the orcs have different color skin, and so you can see migration patterns and see different shade, you know, like skin color in the real world. It's not always A plus B equals C every time. It's like A plus B equals one of these 10 different, you know, shades of skin at any given moment for genetic reasons that we don't understand. And so you see a lot of people in Hadast and Port Little who are they've got blue in their skin, or they've got blue in their eyes, because the Orlithaya migrated down here because of the Lower Mogla. All right, now that I've ranted about one, I've always got a rant, right? Anybody who knows me knows that if brevity is the soul of wit, I'll be brief. Anyways, the Bamboo Temple, you know, I'm just really proud of this. I'm really stoked about it. Is there anywhere that you want to learn more about? Yeah, I guess I don't have a plan for how to end this, so I guess I'll just end it and say thanks for watching. I appreciate you.